everyone, nice to see you all here today. I was lucky enough to come here last year to do a similar talk where I co-presented with the organizer of the space, who's run his own successful Kickstarter project, and it was really fun, so I was more than happy to come back. Today the plan is I'm going to give you a general sort of overview of how Kickstarter works, like how you can use it best. Some of it may be old information, but I'm going to present it from a very sort of how-to Kickstarter perspective, so I think it will be helpful. And then I'll do a case study of a photography project on site that was to print a book, a monograph, and then we'll do Q&A. So hopefully it should be really fun. And as we heard, we should save our questions for the end, but definitely at the end, like, fire them at me if I said anything totally crazy or wrong or confusing, or you just want me to go over something again, I'm more than happy to. All right? So Kickstarter. Kickstarter is, as I think you all know here today, is a website that people use to raise funds for creative projects. So a Kickstarter project is something specific and finite, something you can point to and say, ta-da, it's done, I've made it, like a book, and it's creative. So when we say creative, we're actually really broad in how we define creative at Kickstarter. It has to fit into one of our 13 categories. Photography is one of them, art, design, food, technology, comics. These are all creative categories on Kickstarter. So as long as it fits in one of those categories and it's a project, then you're good. You do offer something in exchange for people's support of your projects on Kickstarter. We call these rewards. The reason we call them rewards is because they should truly be rewarding. They should reward you as the person making them, as well as reward the person who's supporting you. And then we don't allow any charity or cause funding. So a nonprofit is more than welcome to use Kickstarter, but you need to use it for a creative project. We also like to say, you know, no funding, like no funding for school, no Fund My Life projects is what we call them, creative projects. So another important thing that to understand how Kickstarter works is the all or nothing model. So we require this. And basically what it means is when someone comes to Kickstarter and they want to set up a project, they figure out how much money they need to raise. So in this case, it's $3,000. And they give themselves a period of time to raise that money within. It's usually about 30 days or so. You can do as long as 60 days on Kickstarter, but we've really seen the most success at 30 days. The internet moves very quickly. When you launch something, it's exciting, and then it kind of is already stale after, like, you know, the first week. So you want to keep things moving. Keep the urgency going. So in this example, let's say they don't reach their $3,000 goal. Those 31 people that have pledged to their project, none of them would actually get charged. Their credit cards have not been charged yet, and they would not be charged unless that goal is met by the time that 47 hours runs down. People always make their goal at this point. It's kind of the magic of the all or nothing model. People always ask us, so why do you do this crazy thing? I can tell you the short answer is it's because it works. If you have a project and it's going to cost you $3,000 to do, and you tell the world that unless I get this $3,000, it's not going to happen, you are really motivated to get yourself to that goal, like really motivated. And then the people supporting you who are excited about your idea are really motivated to see you get to that goal. So it's this collective effort. It's really very powerful. Most money pledged on Kickstarter does go to a successful project. People do want to see projects succeed. Along those lines, we've seen that once a project reaches just 30% of its funding goal, it does usually succeed. In fact, historically, we've seen that once a project hits that 30% mark, projects have succeeded over 90% of the time. So really, Kickstarter is as much about having a great idea and having a great project that you're sharing the idea with, as well as getting momentum and getting people excited about your project. So we've been around, oh, you know what, this slide's a little out of date. Exciting news. I made this slide maybe 2 weeks ago, and now we are now at over $500 million pledged on Kickstarter. Something like 3.4 million people have pledged to projects on the site. So it's really big, it's really energetic. There's a really huge, I like to think of it as a creative ecosystem. There's been over 36,000 successfully funded projects. We're fast approaching 37,000 projects on site. So we've been around, we're approaching our 4-year anniversary, so you can see a lot has happened in 4 years. A little less than half of all projects that launch on Kickstarter will reach their goal. which, you know, considering, you know, statistics and grant writing and all the other things you try to do in your life, that's actually pretty good odds. I can also tell you that a full quarter of those that don't meet their goal never get a single pledge. So again, this idea of not just making a great project, but making sure you get momentum and tell people about it and get excited about it is really key to success on Kickstarter. We do charge a fee for our service. We charge 5%, but that's only if you meet your goal. If you don't make your goal, since no one's charged, we can't charge you 5%, right? And then Amazon processes the credit card, so they charge another 3 to 5%. So when you're setting your goal on Kickstarter, you might want to consider these fees, this 8 to 10% of fees. People are usually overfunded, something like 110, 113%, so it usually balances out, but just, you know, FYI, project planning tips. Again, numbers move so quickly at Kickstarter, and I really did just make this slide a few weeks ago, and it is out of date. Games is either about to or has just crossed the $100 million mark on Kickstarter. Games is the fastest growing category on the site. Film has always been huge. Film is where, you know, the dollars are always bigger. We always see people winning awards. As I just mentioned earlier, I backed a short documentary earlier this year that just a few weeks ago won an Oscar for Best Short Doc. Music is a giant category in the site as well. Photography, because it is a subcategory, or it's not a subcategory, it's actually its own category. It's a much smaller space within sort of the overall Kickstarter sphere. There's been like, I think, like 1,500 photography projects. But if we look at this view, you can see some of those other things. That was in terms of successful dollars pledged. This is in terms of successful projects. So you could see that design and technology have totally dropped off this list, and now we're left really with the arts, with music and film and art and theater. So really this thing that is Kickstarter is really about creative projects, about individuals like me and you who have a very straightforward idea that other people are supporting. I love this slide. I think this slide helps dispel a lot of the sort of anxiety that people have about Kickstarter, because a lot of the projects you hear about in the news are big projects, the blockbuster projects, $25,000, $100,000, $1 million projects, when in fact I think it's 74% of projects have raised between $1,000 and $10,000 on Kickstarter. On average, people are raising about $6,000 or $7,000, depending on what category, what kind of project you're trying to run, but it's usually about $6,000 or $7,000. So that's our stats, and we're really into stats because we think A, it helps people understand how powerful this movement is, but also B, it helps you understand how to structure your project, and I'll continue sharing a few with you throughout this presentation. We do share that all on our website as well, kickstarter.com/help/stats, so you can just go and you can always see what we're up to. But the thing I really want to talk to you guys about today, and what I'm going to really focus on for the rest of this presentation, is this idea of storytelling. Kickstarter projects are powerful storytelling projects. A Kickstarter project is a powerful way to tell a story, to engage people in your story, to invite people into something that you've been working on. You know, like that creative thing that you've had sort of in the corner of your mind for a long time, and it's ready to put out into the world as a way to bring people along in that journey with you. So there's a few different ways you tell your story on Kickstarter. The first one is the project video, and so I hope a lot of you here have had the pleasure of watching a project video on Kickstarter. They're really short. They're like 3 minutes or less. I think 2 minutes is plenty, honestly. I've watched a lot of them now. They're usually told in the first person. So, hey, my name is Stephanie. Here's the thing I'm really excited about. Here's how you can get involved, and thank you so much. They're just kind of like to the point. And it's just people telling their stories, and that's really all it comes down to. You can certainly have more fun with it, and I encourage you to explore our website to watch some fun videos, but really that's it. You don't have to go nuts. Actually, again, David Brommer, who I said I presented with last year, he had a great video. It's just him telling his sort of passion project story. So rewards. Rewards are another way you tell your story on Kickstarter. Absolutely the truth. So if your video is the way that you invite people in, rewards are the way that they find their way in, right? So the rewards are very typically a copy of the thing. So if you're making a book, it's a copy of the book. If you're making a film, it's a copy of the film. If it's, you know, the Impossible Project Instant Lab, it's the Instant Lab, right? So it's the thing that you're helping to make come to life. The cool thing about Kickstarter is because you are funding something before it has been created, there's an enormous opportunity to invite people into the experience and process of the making of that thing. So we've seen authors say, hey, as a reward, I'll name the main character in my book, anything you suggest, you know, within taste, of course. We've seen comic book artists paint people into sort of the crowd scenes in their comic book. We've seen musicians invite people to come to the studio while they're working on recording their record, right? They'll come do a live session recording with us. So it's a way to say, not only are you going to get this CD when it's done or this book when it's done, but you can see my process and become a part of that process and even inform that process if you're comfortable with that. So most people who are pledging on Kickstarter are pledging around the $25 mark. This is where we are most often seeing people part with their hard-earned cash in exchange for something of value. This is really key because I look at a lot of projects on Kickstarter and I see people who come up with $25 rewards. It's like, $25, I'll thank you on my Facebook page. I don't know about you, but I don't think the $25 is a thank you on a Facebook page. Those two things don't match up. Of course, people still pledge for it. It still works. It's like that good yeehaw feeling, I was a part of this. But that's not the sort of sustainable energy that you want to create on your Kickstarter page. So we're going to look at a project in a minute that I think actually in the end, I'm not sure what he did at $25, but for $35 you can get a print from the work, like an original archival print, which was pretty cool. So think really long and hard about this $25 level. This is where you're going to get a lot of momentum on your project. This is where people are going to be supporting you and being excited about you, telling your story on your behalf. They're going to be telling their friends, you know, on their Facebook pages. So you really want to offer something of value that people are going to be excited to dive in for, not things that they feel like burden, like they're donating to your project. The $100 tier is super important as well. This is where we've seen the most sort of energy, this is where people get the most momentum towards reaching their goal, right? So you need less people to get more money. So when you are crafting your $100 tier, you want to think really long and hard. Who are my $100 backers? Who are the people that are going to give me $100? And what can I give them in exchange to entice them to give me that $100? So you should think really carefully about these two tiers. You also don't want to overwhelm people with too many rewards, right? I don't know if you guys have ever read that famous study about too many drinks in the drink case. People just walk away. They don't buy a drink at the end of the day. It's similar on Kickstarter. You want to be like really kind of targeted and to the point. And finally, project updates. So project updates are basically like a blog that is built into your Kickstarter page. This is something that most people making Kickstarter projects don't really think about before you launch your project. You're just like, making a project, gotta make things, gotta get people to pledge to my project, You don't even think about this thing, but this is actually really, really important. This is when your project is live. This is how you stay in touch with people. This is how you tell them the great news about how much momentum you have, about the great press you're getting, about the new reward you added due to popular demand. This is how you stay in touch with people. So this is what it looks like. Basically, the way it works is once someone pledges even a single dollar to your project, they're automatically subscribed to your project updates. So project updates appear both on your project page. That's on the left there. You can see it's a different tab. And then this is it in your inbox. So let's say I gave this project $1, I would get this email saying, hey guys, thanks so much for funding our album. Here's a song that we made thanks to you. So project updates are also a great way to say thank you, to give people gifts or presents as a reward for their support of your project. You could see that these things are shareable, so it's also a way to say, hey backers, we know you're our super fans. Here's a song, we're leaking it to you, and go ahead and leak it to all your friends. So it's a way also to build momentum and support around your project even after the funding period has ended. So backers, you guys, I've been saying this word a few times throughout this presentation. What do I mean when I say that? These are the people that support your project. These are the people that give you $1, $5, $25, $100. These are the people that by the end of your project, as we heard a little earlier, will care as much about your project as you care about it, or feel that way sometimes. They'll be writing in saying, when's that Oscar nomination coming? They'll be saying, hey, I'm so excited about getting that thing in the mail. They love you, right? And they love what you're working on. I myself have pledged money to 223 projects, I think, usually about $1, but I feel deeply involved with all these projects. I've seen dance performances, I've gone to movies, I've read books, I'm wearing tights actually that were Kickstarter funded. So it's kind of amazing how these people and their creative passions become a part of your life. So they're your new family, which is cool. So the important thing for you guys to know in structuring your Kickstarter project is who these people are and how you reach out to them. So the majority of them will be people you already know, right? So your friends, your family, your Facebook fans, your Twitter followers, the people in your own network. If you don't have that big of a network, you might think about growing it before you launch a Kickstarter project. If you're totally satisfied with the size of your network, you might start thinking about making sure that you are connected and they do know what you're up to. So the way that you think about this is when you are structuring your project, when you're creating those rewards I alluded to earlier, this is great news. You know exactly who's going to be supporting you and spreading the word on your behalf. So you know what kind of rewards to offer, you know how to price them, you know how to communicate with those people, and you know how to give them information they're going to be excited to share on your behalf, right? If you do really well with this group of people, with this majority, your network, right? Your project will go beyond your network. You know, something like 15 to 25% on average of projects go beyond someone's original network, and many projects go well beyond their original network, like the Impossible project we heard about earlier, for instance, or the short doc I funded was definitely beyond the network kind of story because it was just charming and contagious. So again, I think whenever I'm talking to people about their Kickstarter projects, this is another thing that gets neglected until the project has launched. I would say well before you've launched a project, think about these people, categorize them, start talking to them about what you're up to, start talking to them about rewards, and really thinking about how you're going to engage these people in your project. Once your project, I wanted to give you we're actually, I think, just changed this tool, so the screenshot might be a little stale. But basically, once these people support your project and then once it has been successful, you have a few ways you can continue to interact with them. So this is called the backer report. So while your project is live, it gives you a rundown of all the people. You can also message those people by tier, so you can message your $5 people, which means that you can say, hey, $5 people, it's been so awesome to have you supporting my project. I wanted you to know I created a new $10 reward. I think you're really going to like it. The project's very close to being funded. Before it ends, maybe you could check out the $10 reward. So you can write really targeted messages. You can also go in that report and message just one person. You could say, hey, thanks so much for supporting my project, and just leave it at that. And a lot of people suggest that that is a really important thing to do. Once your project succeeds, you'll also then be able to download this report, but only once it's been successful. So okay, I want to give you guys a case study too, to give you a sense of the nitty-gritty of how this all plays out. And for the one gentleman in the audience who's run his own project, he'll be familiar with this. But this is sort of the life of a Kickstarter project. So this is actually a photo book that I supported. And it's an unusual story for me in that I found out about it on Twitter. Most projects that people discover, you do not find out about them on Twitter, and certainly from people you don't know, which was the case for me. So I follow a few celebrities, and Emily Deschanel, for those of you who know who she is, I follow her on Twitter, and she tweeted out, hey guys, my friend Chris Anthony has a Kickstarter project, check it out. And I was like, you have a friend who has a Kickstarter project? Do tell. So I just went and looked at it. I immediately fell in love with his work. I did not immediately back it, but I started it and kept going back to it while it was live. And then finally, you know, he's very close to reaching his goal. I was like, forget it, I'm in. But it's a great project, so I think a case of me finding someone I don't know, so I thought it would be good to share with you. So it's a photography book project. He had set out to raise $19,000. He raised over $21,000. This kind of overfunding, as I said, is pretty typical, you know, for people to go 15, 20% beyond their goal even. So he'd been making a series of these using old style processes. I asked him for a blurb about the book because I put him in a book show recently, and he said something like he thought of this work as his photo journal. Like, it's very strange and mysterious and almost like a diary. But it had been work that he'd been just sort of collecting for a while, and he really just wanted to put it together. So this is something really cool. Let me go back a couple slides a sec. So if you see, 160 people backed his project. He had 613 people like it on Facebook. And people tweeted it, but it looks like my Twitter thing didn't work here. If you look at this, you can see that almost 5,000 people watched his project video. So beyond the 160 people that supported him, the hundreds of people, the 600-something people that liked him on Facebook and shared his story, he had 5,000 people who saw this video, both on our website and elsewhere, which means that, and this is something I tell people all the time about Kickstarter, it is not just a fundraising platform. It is also an incredible PR platform, right? So as I said, it's an incredible way to tell your story and engage people on your story. So, you know, I've never asked Chris about this, but I'm sure he has plenty of incredible stories about how this Kickstarter project sort of changed the narrative of his overall project beyond just sort of the raising the funds and the 160 people getting his work. So let's take a look at his rewards. How did Chris do this? So again, Chris did an incredible job in his project description of showing you images of his work, including images of what the rewards would be. So this is the $35 reward. It was a 4x5 archivally printed image, open edition, right? And you could choose from 5. I chose the center one. I really like it a lot. Here's the breakdown. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the most popular 5 most popular rewards on his project. Approximately 15% of his backers for each of those categories pledged to there. So about 20 or so people pledged for each of those. The $400 reward is the tier that generated the most money. So while he has half as many backers who pledged there, since it was $400. It generated like 20% of the funds, what came from this one reward. So something really interesting to look at here, and this is like so important. $20 he offers an ebook, right? We see this a lot on Kickstarter. People are making artist books. They're expensive. They're like $65 usually minimum. They're really, you know, because fine quality, really good color. You want to make sure you're doing it right. You want it to be archival and last forever. So an ebook is a great way to offer access to the content without having to worry about all those production costs. As I mentioned earlier, $35 included the ebook as well as the open edition archival pigment print. That's where I eventually crumbled, as I mentioned. I just was like, I love this guy and his work. I'll take a print to help him get his book published. $65 is really typical for artist books on Kickstarter is for the standard edition book. This is going to be like the no bells and whistles version. This is the book, this is the work, you get it in hard copy. Then he made a limited edition version of the book, which is an incredible way to differentiate. So if you want to charge $65 for a book and then you're like, how do I make another sort of version more valuable? You think about offering limited editions. You can think about signing it like he did for $120 and offering it in. And so the distinction here, he also offered it with a special slipcase. It's really important to actually add value. Sometimes you'll see someone just say, you can get the book for $85 or I'll sign, sorry, for $65 or I'll sign it for $85. That's not usually enough to make someone make that $20 jump. So you really want to think about how are you really bumping up the value. Interesting thing, for $325 he offered, it was like essentially the same as the $400 reward, except it was not in a clamshell box, it was just in the slipcase. And he only had 3 people pledge $325. He had 11 people pledge $400. So 8 people thought it was worth $75 extra to get this special clamshell box. So things like this is a great project to look at because he was really almost like mathematical in the way he created these tiers and really thought about how do I add value and encourage people to pledge up. So this is a sense of how his rewards broke down. He ended up having a lot of rewards. That one all the way on the left means that people didn't select a reward. So there were actually a few people in this project that didn't even want a reward. They were just like, here's some money. We think what you're doing is cool, which is a nice thing about Kickstarter. It is this blend between patronage and commerce. Those are the 5 rewards I pointed out earlier that were the most popular. That spike there is the $400 reward. But most people pledge between the $20, $120 level. This is really typical for a Kickstarter project. His average pledge was actually quite high, and it was because of that $400 book. So again, this is a great project. Usually people the average pledge is about half that. So this is... Yeah. And this is online. So if you go to Kickstarter.com and search Seas Without a Shore, or Chris Anthony, either his name or the name of the book, you can spend hours looking at what he did and why he did it right. So let's take a look at duration. As I mentioned earlier, you can do a project for anywhere from 1 day to 60 days on Kickstarter. People certainly have done very tiny projects in 1 day. People certainly have done projects that last seemingly forever on Kickstarter. We have seen the most success at 30 days Chris must have read that somewhere. He ran the standard 30-day project. This is a really typical funding graph. You could see he had a big launch, so it means that he prepped his community, those backers that you know, right? He reached out to all of them ahead of time, said, hey guys, I'm working on this project, it's this book, let me seduce you and wow you with all these stories about it, which meant that on the day he launched, he got a lot of support right out the gate. Each of these dots represent a day. Then it was quiet, sort of, you know, it's a lot of work to do a Kickstarter project. I'm not gonna sort of try to hide that. In fact, I encourage you to read all of these people's stories about what they have to do over this 30-day period, because it's quite a lot. So this is happening for him, he's working, and then in the final week you always see this big thing, because suddenly people are like, crap, I have a week left and I'm like this far from my goal, and then people really go all out, they pull out all the stops, they write to the people they think are going to pledge $400, they're like, hey, I know you collect limited edition fine art books, I have a book for you. It's like really kind of being very upfront with people and saying exactly what it is you're doing and how you think that they would be excited about participating. But usually it takes about 20 days to get up the nerve to do that. You also want to make sure that you have momentum, right? So you want to make sure that when you invite those people to look at your project that it looks like you're doing well, people are excited about you, people have pledged to you. Maybe you've gotten some press that you can share when you write that letter, like, hey, fine art person, look at this incredible press I got, would you like a book? So you can find lots of ways to engage people over this period of time. Chris did an excellent job. Really the majority of his support did come from off Kickstarter. Usually that green wedge, that represents support that came through the Kickstarter website. Usually that green wedge is a little bigger. Like I said, it's usually like a quarter of the pie or so. But I'm sure it sounds like Chris was just like really hustling and telling his famous friends to tweet about him, which I said earlier, I'm sure I'm the only one who clicked that link. But the fact that he was asking people to do it and that one person did click it, and then I know I told people about the project. Okay, so I just wanted to go back and say that all these graphs and charts I'm showing you, by the way, these are all things that a project creator has access to while their project is live. So I pulled these all from Chris's project. I didn't make them for today's occasion. This is a screenshot. And yeah, we'll do questions at the end. We can always go back. So project updates. As I mentioned, this is like a blog that's built into your Kickstarter project. It's like any other blog you've ever seen. You put a title, you sort of get to choose text and what that text looks like. You can add video, you can add audio, you can have links like in the example I showed you earlier. So it's like any multimedia blog ever. And this is what they look like a blog post. So Chris launched his project. He had that big spurt because he had all those people who are really excited about him. And then he sent his first project update. So this is while his project is live, and I realize that the text is kind of fuzzy. But basically he's like, thank you so much. He's like thanking people who have gotten him as far as he's gotten. I think he was like 15 or 20% funded at this point. This is like, it's happening, the time's counting down, you guys were gonna make it happen together, and I wanted to let you know I added a new photograph to the collection. So this was like, he added sort of like, you know, a little juice, a little sugar to his story, right? Then likewise, so that's the beginning, like you wanna keep the momentum going. This is the end when you have to hustle. You have 2 days left. You wanna make sure that you're gonna get there. So he's 80% funded with 2 days left. He tells them how he's really excited. He shares, he tells people how he could share the project, and he includes the link to the project itself, which sounds kind of silly, but is actually really important. Whenever people email me and say, hey, will you check out my project? I can't tell you how many times they forget to send me a link. I'm like, if I can't click it, I'm not gonna look at it, trust me. And it's not just me, it's like, I'm speaking for the internet right now. And he, of course, always, in every update he ever sent, he sends a picture of his work, because it's really his work that we're supporting and getting excited about, right? And then when he succeeds, he sends out this thank you everyone post, which is beautiful. He says, okay, now we did it, this is what's gonna happen next. And then he of course shares some press that he had gotten. Hot tip, HuffPo, I feel like every day there's like 20,000 Kickstarter stories there, so it's a great sort of press outreach place to go. So there's his work. And then, let's see if this will work. So I made this, because this is kind of a long update, I made a screen recording of this most recent update he sent at the end of January, beginning of February, and he had just gotten the first sort of tests back from the printer for the really super limited edition clamshell version of the book. These are the prints, the archival prints he'd made himself that I got mine in the mail shortly after this email went out. And he's like kind of playing around with making slipcases and really experimenting. So he gives an update where we're at in the process, when we can expect to see our rewards in the mail, and then here's a sneak peek of what it's like inside my studio right now. So this is a big part of what it's like supporting a Kickstarter project. It's getting to see the thing made. It's amazing. I love it. I enjoy it every single time. Okay, that's the case study. So these are the things before we go to Q&A. This is actually a really important list. I would say definitely if you haven't spent a lot of time on the site, go to the site, look at other projects, look at people who are doing things like you're doing. Let's say you want to go travel to Norway to take photos of some people. Look at how other people have done that, right? I would say back a project, even if it's just for $1, so you can get the experience of like what it is like to be part of this from the backer point of view. Tell people about what you're up to. You can share drafts with people on Kickstarter, which is really cool. And then, like, you know, just get ready. All right, so let's do Q&A. Yes?
What happens if transactions are declined at the end?
Oh, yeah. So what happens is that Kickstarter will send your backers a notification, as will Amazon, and will say, hey, guess what? Something must have happened with your credit card since you pledged this project. Click here to update your information. I think that period just is about 7 days. We give people 7 days to update their info. Sometimes it's a very small percentage of people it won't actually shake out, but it doesn't mean you're going to like lose your funding if that happens. Yeah.
What's Amazon's relation with Kickstarter?
They process the payments. So when someone pledges to your project, what essentially they're doing is they're authorizing a credit card charge to Amazon. If you meet your goal when the time runs out, Amazon will then charge your credit card unless something goes wrong. And then they'll try to charge it until it goes right. Then they'll collect all that money and then disperse the payments, distribute the payments. Yes?
Do you have to have an account set aside for Kickstarter?
Like a bank account?
Yeah. What type of account?
So the question was, do you have to have a bank account set aside to do a Kickstarter project? No, you could just use your personal checking account. If you have an LLC or if you're incorporated, you could use that. Nonprofits use their accounts. Yeah, you choose.
I'm a little confused with the bank account. You can just give a credit card.
It's okay. The person creating the project will attach their bank account to their Amazon Payments account. So that way, when people pledge money to you, Amazon charges those people. They then put their money in your bank account. People backing a project, people who are giving money to a project, you just use a credit card. Yes. Yeah. So 2 questions. One was, if your project gets funded, it usually takes about, we say give it up to 2 weeks, but it's usually less than that until you get the money in your bank account. So it's very fast. And the other question was, how long does the project stay up on Kickstarter? It is forever. Yeah. So be as sure about it as you can. Yes.
How important do you think it is to list what the budget is going, or what the money is going towards the budget?
I think one of the nice things about Kickstarter is you do not have to submit a detailed expense report, but I think people do want to get a general sense. So it's like $19,000 to do a book? Really? Why? So you can sort of say, oh, my printer requires this, or if I print 100 copies of the book, it's going to be this much cheaper for future. You sort of give people a little bit of the rationale, but certainly not like an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, you meant there was a pie chart where it said like 25%, almost 25% was directly from Kickstarter, and then the rest was external referrals.
Yeah, it was in Chris's case. I think it was more like 10%.
Right.
Right.
So what do you mean by like external referrals? Does that mean
so basically, I'll find it for you. This one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that gray represents people who found out about the project not on Kickstarter. So let's say you sent someone an email, you sent them the link with the email, and you said, hey, what's up, I'm working on this awesome book project, check it out. They click the link, they give you some money. They would fall into the gray category. Mostly that means most of those pledges will come from emails. They'll be individual one-on-one emails. Second most is Facebook. Twitter is usually a close third, depending on how Twitterific you are. But Facebook is definitely more impact than Twitter. Yeah, so that's what the green represents, the Kickstarter, people who discovered the project on the Kickstarter website. It could be anywhere from 15 to 25%. It depends on who you are, what kind of project you have. Yeah, I mean, and listen, this is all anecdotal information. Like, this is just from me looking at a lot of these pie charts and seeing that it's usually, you know, about a quarter. Yes?
Can you put up projects that are early stages in a project? You're not going to have the book like right away, and also can you fund multiple stages of the project?
Yeah, it's really common in film projects, for instance, which have very big budgets and very long life cycles, to do multiple projects. You can definitely invite people in earlier in the process. I would say that you should invite them in when you have enough to show them, like things that you've been working on. Like we saw in Chris's video, he had a lot of photographs. Even if he wasn't so close to pushing the print button on his book, if he still had a lot of work to show us. And we give you we have this thing called estimated delivery date. You can set that as far as 2 years in the future. So really just acknowledging that some of these creative projects do have long timelines and that you might want to come back and do it again. There's a film project that I think they did like 4 or 5 Kickstarter projects before they finally were released in like 100 theaters nationwide. I had pledged to like 2 out of the 5. I was like, finally! It was very exciting.
So,
If you have a project that has 4 or 5 stages and you succeed in getting the first 2 stages funded, but the third one doesn't get funded, what happens?
Usually it's a conditional sort of thing. So it's like, again, like we want to do the best soundtrack ever, right? Or we want to have this incredible graphic designer do the layout. It means that you're probably not going to have the great graphic designer or have the great soundtrack. So you kind of say, like, if we can raise this money, the project will be this much better. The nice thing about this being a PR campaign as much as it is a fundraising campaign, you might meet someone along the way that's like, hey, I'm sorry you didn't make your goal, but I think you could also do X. You know, they might give you other solutions, or someone may come to you after the fact and say, I'd love to help you get this funded some other way, which happens frequently.
So if you don't raise your money, can you go back and try to do it again? Or?
Yes. What people have found is that you learn a lot through the process of making a Kickstarter project. So if you launch a project, and it doesn't reach your goal, you don't reach your goal, you may learn that your network, you didn't create the right rewards for your network, you didn't have the right contact information for them, you didn't have a good email list, maybe you set your goal too high. You like kind of figure out, or maybe your video is just a total flop, or maybe you didn't have a video and you realize that you really needed one. But people say over and over again that they've learned so much, like through the first process, that the second one is usually successful.
Can you change the or add
rewards?
Yeah, rewards.
You can add rewards. So basically, when you launch your project, only 2 things are totally fixed: your funding goal and the day, the amount of days that you're trying to reach it within. You could change anything else. Your rewards become locked once someone pledges to that tier. So you can edit the copy, you can remove it, you can do whatever with it, but once someone pledges, then it comes locked in. But you can always mark it as all gone, which means, all right, there's enough of these already, or you can add a new reward as well. Or if you realize you put something out there and it was just like wrong and you don't like it anymore, you can end it and then replace it with something else, but you do have to like leave it up as part of the archive and history of the project. All right, great. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.